So many ideas have been rattling around my head, but I can't seem to get a grip on any of them. I have iCarly, Meet the Robinsons, 9, a series of unfortunate events, and many more. But I've lately been unable to stretch my concepts into any meaningful video. Thankfully, I found some solace in Despicable Me once again. For those unaware, Illumination Entertainment is packed with bizarre consistency in regards to story, something noticeable in their Lorax adaptation and mainly, of course, the Despicable Me films. Things flow so well whenever you try to take a look at why things happen in the story. Questions like, what is Miss Hattie's backstory? Or how did Gru meet Nefario? They all have answers. They are quite literally just sitting there waiting to be discussed, not presented overtly, but covertly. Stories told in sticky notes, solved with basic inference. So I skipped around through the film again to see if one line matches another somewhere else, or, something like that. Of course, I found more, this time regarding a most interesting subject, the Bank of Evil. This time, I will present my findings in a sane manner, because when I present the conclusion before the explanation, like with Miss Hattie, nobody initially believes me, and that impression sticks with them, no matter how interesting it gets. This is why I spent a few weeks a while ago testing it with crazy theories. Presentation is everything, and I can't flub this Bank of Evil when I'm so close to the brink of conspiratorial solution. Every little offhand theory I've had in past Despicable Me theories, this is where they all come together. Hello, I'm the Theorizer, and for those who still await the next leg of my Madagascar Mortverse theory, give it time. Despicable Me is our target today. More specifically, Vector, Mr. Perkins, and the influence they've exerted. So what do we know about the Bank of Evil? The Bank is an extremely wealthy criminal organization that functions as the center of global crime because they reel in villains and trap them financially. They feel like an ancient syndicate of sorts, given how powerful they are, so as to hide in plain sight, fronted by nothing more than a tiny normal bank. It likely isn't secrecy keeping them from defeat, however, it's power. They have dirt on all the villains, and yet all the villains need them. This puts them in an ideal position where their continued existence actually prevents catastrophe. Sneaky gambit, and very likely, too, based on how they operate in broad daylight. The company, or at least this branch, is managed by Mr. Perkins. It says the bank was formerly the Lehman Brothers, implying this was the result of that real-world company's 2008 bankruptcy. Thus, I theorize that this organization became significantly richer around that time, and perhaps that they are the cause of said bankruptcy. The first film takes place probably in either 2010 or 2012, as I discussed in my Miss Hattie video. I told you it would come in handy. All these little points and theories I've been plotting are coming together here. Anyways, Mr. Perkins implies he's been with Gru for long enough to consider him antiquated, which I guarantee isn't just 4 years. An impression that someone is outdated like this, that takes time, and thus Gru has been with this company longer, meaning the Bank of Evil wasn't created from the 2008 Lehman bankruptcy, but probably significantly benefited from it and likely seized its assets, hence their more recent displeasure of Gru as they no longer need his heists. So we have its age. This all means the Bank of Evil is indeed a much older organization, and given the painting on Mr. Perkins' wall, it's possible that Mr. Perkins is related to, and that the organization dates back to the era of, Napoleon I. As to whether or not this bank is the only one of its kind, well, I see it more as a facet of a larger criminal syndicate, but yes, this one seems to be owned and operated by Mr. Perkins. I also felt like it was ancient, and his conversations with Gru proved that to be true, so gut feelings are not to be merely ignored regarding this shady operation. As I also discussed in the Miss Hattie theory, it's possible that she is the disgruntled, bankrupted wife of another character we know, with possibilities including her being El Macho's wife, and yes, I'm now also inclined to say Mr. Perkins' wife. I do question if this orphanage is or was also the front of a criminal syndicate, now answering some lingering questions from that video, but there's not a ton of evidence with that connection, despite the wiki also suggesting it without discernible evidence. So anyways, back to Mr. Perkins. He's the president of this bank and is crucial to the likely greater syndicate's ties. I told you all of these little offhand comments would come in handy eventually, because remember what we discussed about another secret and shady organization? We had nothing at the time, but now we can see a clear connection, because it's possible that another facet of this organization is the AVL. If you'll recall, I previously discussed their nonchalance and intentional failure to catch villains. They also replaced the role of the Bank of Evil in films 2 and 3, but see my Despicable Timeline theories for more on that. So now that we know the backstory behind the bank, we can start applying it and answering questions never before asked. Mr. Perkins' son, Victor Perkins, aka Vector, steals the Great Pyramid of Giza in the opening of film 1. My question is, how did he logistically pull this off? They never show it happening because it would require mass hypnosis of the guards, camera disabling, so on and so forth. Or because there's a far, far easier answer to what happened here. It is simple. They did not show it happening, and nobody called it out sooner because the pyramid wasn't stolen. Depending on the longevity of this syndicate, I might be inclined to suggest that they were the reptilians responsible for its creation in the first place, but more likely, the organization, this Bank of Evil, bought it from the Egyptian government as a publicity stunt to promote Vector's introduction to the world. Vector is not a single entity because he's backed by everything, and this crime of the century sparks a new world order. The news talks about how everyone is hyper-defensive of national landmarks now, and how fear rules the world. So now that we've got the pyramid scheme out of the way, this perfectly transitions me into the Syndicate's next wave of influence, the media. There's something strange in the statements made about Gru, certain phrases that are associated with him in the newspapers which are then misappropriated and applied elsewhere. When we do see the news, we briefly bear witness to an MSNBC anchorman who steals Gru's infamy phrases when referencing things about Vector. Where will he strike next? Sort of thing. It's almost like it could be connected, and why wouldn't it be? Syndicates like this need that element of trust and control. It's pretty standard. The bank paid off the MSNBC anchor to use Gru's famous line so as to imply it was Gru who stole it and have him arrested, or, more likely, what they're doing is trying to mock and subdue Gru until Vector can take his place as ultimate villain. We see it play out in the beginning of Despicable Me. And the bank has clear signs of having plotted against Gru for quite some time, to the point where I, again, assume the AVL, and by that extension possibly Scarlet Overkill, have something to do with it. The disdain for Gru is shared by both organizations, you see. And as for that anchorman, know that I am dead serious when I say I think he was manipulated into helping the Syndicate, because get a load of this. Not only does he prefer his own notes to that of the teleprompters, but the real evidence? There's another connection. Gru stole the NBC Jumbotron only months prior, around the same time Vector started making a name for himself. I told you. And who funds Gru's heists? The bank. It makes absolutely perfect nonsense. They fund a theft of a socially integral news company and then spill the beans to NBC and betray Gru because they're slowly but surely replacing Gru and publicly yet subtly dragging his name as they do so. Mr. Perkins is pretty upfront about this sort of thing. Gru is frightening and well known enough to get away with violating his suburb's HOA regulations, and in many ways is sort of perceived as an international mystery villain. But this level of mystery is not particularly good either, as he is now surreptitiously being replaced with Vector. Because Vector is the son of the Syndicate that wants an even more complete grasp on Earth now that they have the Lehman funds to do so, through one organization or another. Utterly brilliant. I hope the new prequel gives me more to work with in this regard, and if you somehow still don't believe this random newscaster who's on screen for like 15 collective seconds is crucial, if you somehow still just think I'm exaggerating another random offhand character, you're wrong. Because this same newscaster is one of the only characters important and focused enough to prove the Illumination shared universe by being in the secret life of pets as well. Based on what we've seen from Illumination so far, they mock the concept of what they are. If anyone's likely to create a shared universe just for kicks, it's not Pixar. It's these guys. The voice actor of the Anchorman is also the same guy who voices Gru's informational training video for the Minions in the short film Orientation Day. That could be a coincidence, he does sound different, but what really is or is not off the table at this point? And I do believe that there could be even more to him given this newfound investment in Gru's downfall. I was highly inclined to do a genealogical analysis of him to see if he might be related to Perkins. This, though, character design is one of those elements that Illumination doesn't retain consistency in. It wouldn't matter anyways. This syndicate is explicitly stated to be powerful and has the will and the way to infiltrate the government with ease, so is it honestly any stretch that this has just proven my evil AVL theory? No stretch, just business. And if it's proven that, then lots more opens up. And I'll again repeat how the Anchorman even states that global war has been incited from the world landmarks because the goal is annihilation and rebirth, destruction of the old world and its symbols, common with any evil organization. My final statement will go back to Miss Hattie because even if she has no familial relations to the Perkins family, I'm dead certain that she has some nasty plan up her sleeve and has succumbed to the Bank of Evil or one of its decoy fronts. Maybe she is a front. The whole subplot with her is bankruptcy. She wants rich doctors to adopt, as I explained in her dedicated video. The Syndicate, the evil behind her, is the Bank of Evil. It completely comes together. She wants the rich doctors because the economy has siphoned away her funds into Vector. She needs to start adopting out girls exactly as planned with Gru. And remember that other doctor, director Easter egg on her desktop? Well, again reinstating its significance in-universe. Renault is a French last name, and the Perkins family has quite a history with French royalty being directly related to Napoleon I. If they were trying to adopt out children, could they know of Gru's intimate plans? Are they spying on him? Could they have a spy, like the only other human around? Nope, can't go there. I know it'll be debunked in the Rise of Gru. But, you know, in general, the Bank of Evil is part of a global syndicate. That's what they are, and it should be pretty obvious. It's just expected, honestly, and there are many connections to every corner of this franchise to prove it, and prove their influence despicable. And on the whole, do you see? I have mostly maintained complete sanity throughout this video because I have presented it in a non-backwards format. Now, I can rattle off my insane statement. The 15-second news guy from Despicable Me is a persuaded or long-standing member of an international reptilian syndicate that created the pyramids and is responsible for the 2008 financial crisis that will lead to World War III. This is why neither I nor any sane person can summarize my videos. You watch them in their entirety, or you don't watch them at all. I could have started this video with that statement and presented it differently, but then it would have been branded in the same vein as my Reggie and helicopter pilot theories. Those were just standard lore theories, but I centered them around a character nobody talks about, thus making them appear crazy. They were tests, but if you go back to them now and see them from a forced alternate perspective, they are just as legitimate. Those tests helped me sell the Mort theories and will continue to do so. So there you go. A crazy theory that isn't just some logic trail, but is proven every way to Sunday. Speak of the day I'm writing this. This took me under 10 minutes to come up with and an hour to write, which is probably a new record, but I was looking for a theory to make for weeks, so maybe not. With all these connections finally intertwining so beautifully, with all this talk of AVL, evil banks, adoption agencies, and Scarlet Overkill's master plan, maybe Herb is Vector's dad after all. 700,000 subscriber special soon. Until next time, I'm the Theorizer.